Hello, everyone. We are back again with Creative, Confident, Happy Kids, how to help your children embrace their individuality and increase their self-esteem. And today, I have the pleasure of talking with Dr. Mary O'Kane. She's in Ireland right now, so it's later for you and it's early for me. And let me just tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Mary O'Kane is a lecturer in psychology and education, early childhood studies and education with the Open University. Her research interests include childhood transitions, self-esteem and well-being, and the value of play. She runs a monthly parenting slot on Ireland AM, discussing a broad range of parenting and childhood issues while also responding to viewers and parent inquiries. She is also a regular contributor to the Alison Curtis Show on Today FM. She gives public talks on a range of topics related to child well-being, parenting, and education, and is well known for her humorous, down-to-earth approach. Oh, love that. Her first book, Perfectly Imperfect Parenting. Connection, not perfection. Love that. Is due for publication in February 2021. And you're going to talk about that book a little bit later, aren't you?
I will indeed, Lois. Yeah. Lovely to connect with you today.
Oh, it's so lovely to connect with you. And today, you and I are going to be having a conversation that's it's a little bit different than when people have conversations about COVID and what's happening in the home and how difficult it has been for so many people and how they're trying to adjust and what they need to do and everything. And not to minimize any of that, but we are going to try to shift our brain a little bit and go, okay, what are some of the silver linings in COVID right now? And to be able to look at, okay, here we are, we're in the situation, how can we make the best of it? So I think we should just get started with what's going on at home that we can look at, that we can switch to make it like, okay, here we are, we're gonna make the best of it.
Yeah. Well, it's true, Lois. And as you say, I mean, this is a challenging time. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah.
However, I think it's had a few sort of unexpected benefits, perhaps things that perhaps we've reevaluated things a little bit. And I know I'm speaking for myself, but I think so many others as parents, we have been very overscheduled. We've been very rushed. We've been go, go, go. Our lives seem to have been passing by at the speed of light. Yeah. And maybe COVID has made us step back a little bit, and it's made us slow down a little bit. And I think one of the unexpected things was the time we've had with our children. And it has enabled us to maybe reconnect a little bit with them. So even though it has definitely been challenging, and I know it's been such an anxious time for so many, on the other hand, we have had maybe just those everyday moments where we've been reconnecting with our children and connecting with them maybe in a more calm, peaceful way.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. You know, I kind of I didn't welcome this, but I thought when it happened, I thought there was days when I thought, wow, I don't have to go anywhere, and I don't have to, my child come home from school and then take them there, as well as I know that it's getting to the point with my son, he's like, I just want to go back to my activities, and I totally understand that. So now we're having to become a little bit more creative and create those for our children. But there is a sense of relaxation, perhaps. Peace, and I think parents are seeking help. How am I going to be able to do this? And if they're going, okay, we don't know when this is going to end, and let's make the best of what we can.
Yeah, I agree, Lois. And funny, I mean, as you say, my book is Perfectly Imperfect Parenting. Yeah. I think before COVID, we as parents, we had been putting ourselves under huge pressure in the quest for perfection. It seemed that we were living our lives in this absolutely rushed state because we were we'd raise the bar so high. We felt, I have to be engaging in all these activities. I have to be go, go, go in order to support my child. And maybe, I think that was quite stressful for an awful lot of us. So although we know the world is an anxious place at the moment, I think as well, it has made us maybe lower our expectations of ourselves a little and just say, you know, at the moment, what's really important? It
Right.
is my child's well-being. It's my family's well-being, their physical safety, but also their well-being and our relationship with our children, our relationships within our family. And
Mm.
again, I think it's made us maybe really reevaluate them and realize how important those connections are. And as I give that time to building our relationships as our number one. And perhaps, I think for myself, I think perhaps I needed a little jolt to remind me to do that.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's like the old-fashioned days kind of, where
Yes,
you
yes.
and I want to get into this because it's so important how, there wasn't all of these things that entertain children, like the electronics and everything, and there wasn't all these places that we were taking our children to. So it's like we went out and played.
Yeah,
We went
that's it.
to play and and we're learning how incredible play is for children.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, like, even I go through this, I should be there with my kid all the time and sort of entertain and do that thing. But no, half the time it's like they're saying, okay, leave me alone. You go do your work. My work is play, and this is what I'm going to do. So talk a little bit about how play is so incredibly wonderful for children.
Oh, Lois, absolutely it is. Play is, as you say, a child's work. It's how
Mhm.
they learn, it's how they process. And at the moment, I know a lot of parents are saying to me that their children, their imaginary play has definitely is blossoming.
Yes.
But also, and I know there are children who are quite anxious about COVID, and play enables these children to process their fears, to go through them. So many parents saying, my children are playing, maybe nurses, doctors, my children are, reimagining the school situation. They're talking about COVID within their play.
Yes.
And it is a way for them to explore the fears that they might have about COVID.
Mhm.
And I would say to parents, any opportunity you have, when we think, how do we really connect with our children? Well, we connect through play. Become involved for the little ones. Become involved in their play. If they are talking about COVID in their play, if they're processing, get involved in the game. Just sit in the game with them and become involved. And through really being mindful of how they play, it gives us another insight into their world, and it most definitely is how they're learning.
Yeah.
Again, it's funny, we're talking about how we've approached things differently during this period. And I think even in terms of educating our children, we've now realized that actually cooking with our children is a way in which they can learn so many academic skills. Gardening with our children, they're learning in so many different ways. And I suppose that's made us more playful in our interaction with them and maybe aware of the benefits of it. And don't forget the older ones. I know our older children are teenagers, and parents, I think, well, they're not playing. No, but we can still be playful in our interactions with them. And again, it's such a lovely way to connect with them. It really is at any age.
Yeah. So it's such a time where if we really just stop and listen and observe what our children are doing, we can learn so much. So when they're playing, get on the floor and engage with what they're already doing. Don't bring what we want to bring in, but just play with them as to what they're doing. And that in itself is going to increase their confidence. Like everything's going to happen to them that, well, wow, mom or dad is playing with me, and they're validating everything that they're doing. And it's such a wonderful time. And I think
Oh, yeah.
too that, parents sometimes say, well, what's going to happen with my child's education? It's going to fall behind and everything. I think we just need to say, you know what? Yeah, it might a bit, but the whole world is just changing in that
Yes.
way too, right? It's not like my child's going to be behind or anything.
No,
And just
absolutely, Lois.
yeah, and just relax.
Yeah.
Because if we, our parents, are a little bit more relaxed, it's definitely going to, affect the children and how they're feeling.
Oh, definitely, Lois. And I think particularly when the world feels like a scary place to children, when they are feeling anxious, who do they look to? They look to us, and they're no matter what we say to them, they're actually observing how we're
Yes.
behaving.
Yeah.
So as an anxious parent makes an anxious child. So I think again, even as a parent, and I completely recognize, of course, we're all having down days. Of course, we're all having days where we're feeling anxious. But also, we need to remember to think about how we're framing things to our children and to show positivity. And we can either say, oh, this is a really frightening time. I'm not sure how we're going to get through this. Or we can say, if a child is feeling anxious, yeah, I can see you're feeling a little bit scared. But we have come through tough times before. We have this inner brave in us. We know we'll get through. Where, as a family, we have each other, and we know we will get through this. So how we're framing it is very important in terms of how our children will respond and how they cope. If they see us showing some kind of resilience, they feed off what we're giving out to them, and they'll take their lead from us. So that is an important one.
Yeah, we really need to model how we model is going to definitely affect the children. I'm teaching. I have an acting school, so I teach, and I see some of the kids come, and it's just like, yeah, everything's fine, and it's almost like, oh, okay. And before, when they were coming to the studio, I'd say we got to put our masks on and stuff like that, and so of course we did and everything. But then there'd be some other kids who would come, and you could just tell how anxious they were. And then sometimes, when I speak with the parents, I can see kind of where that's coming from. So I think it's just a shift in our mind that we have to change. And I think if a parent says, I think, what do you think about this, Mary? Just setting up a schedule at home, knowing, because schedules are so important for children, setting up a schedule and saying, this is when we're going to do this, and this. So they have a sense of what's coming, what they can expect next, which is so important. And that's, gives the parents time if they're working, gives the child time on their own. And then it's now, this is the time where we can do something together.
That's it, Lois. And I completely agree with you. Again, when the world feels very uncertain, routine, predictability, they have a calming influence on parents and children. So absolutely. And again, I think we have to allow ourselves a little grace, a loose schedule. And as you say, if we sit even on a daily basis with our children, at the end of the day, what's the plan for tomorrow? What will we do? And yes, they might have to do certain amounts of school work, yes, but try to make sure we really balance that with a bit of fun, a bit of laughter, a bit of connection, a bit of family time. And even, I think as parents ourselves, if we in our heads think, okay, I'm literally going to schedule in a little bit of one-on-one time with my children if I can, it reminds us how important that is. And just that loose schedule, I think the whole house feels a little bit calmer when we have that in mind. And if we don't get it all done, that's fine. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for connection. That's what's important. So relax if everything doesn't get done. Absolutely fine. But it just having an awareness of the schedule and that little routine can have a calming influence.
Yeah. I think it's what you said is just key. Like, we just have to give ourselves some grace, and we just have to say, okay, this is the way it is right now, and let's make the best of it, like we're talking about. You were just mentioning a few things before about some of the things that we might have more time now to do with our children, and some of the skills that you might not have had time before, like different crafts, that, because we're all trying to figure out some stuff, crafts and baking and cooking. Talk a little bit about that right now, when it might not be happening when it might not have been happening before, but how it's happening now, and how is that affecting our children?
I have to say again, I think this is one of the little silver linings, Lois, because again, I think in our rush schedule, I think we had forgotten that sometimes these, as we were saying earlier, these old-fashioned activities that perhaps we were doing as children with our parents and our grandparents, I think maybe we'd forgotten the value of that old-fashioned childhood, if you like. And so cooking with our children and having that little bit of time, as you say, the knitting, and so many children I know learning how to crochet, they're learning so many new skills, and they are those more old-fashioned skills. But again, I think the children are responding so well to this. And again, I think because our focus had become quite academic, it is no harm to step back and for us as parents to be reminded of the importance of these other skills, of the value. We talk about the hidden curriculum even in the school, these skills, these very transferable skills that our children are learning. And even sometimes, you mentioned parents working, sometimes when, I know myself, I'm working from home at the moment, and there are times when I have to say to my children, you're going to have to keep yourselves occupied while I'm doing this. A little bit of boredom sometimes does them no harm, and it's helping them use their imaginations again. In the beginning, they might be, oh, Mom, what am I going to do next? Yeah. But pretty soon, I think I'm looking at my own children, they have perhaps become a little bit better at occupying themselves, at finding new things to do. And again, that might be no harm as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, here, okay, well, sorry, I don't know what you're going to do right now. This is my time to work. You figure it out, and now become solution orientated. And that's a good skill for kids to have to be able to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that the things that I've discovered is my son, I thought, okay, I bought a whole bunch of those birdhouses for him to paint. And I have never seen him sit somewhere for 2-3 hours and just paint. Yeah. It's just been wonderful to see. And then, making bread and having the time to take the time to really make your own smoothie and do everything by yourself. Because lots of times in the morning when you're rushed and you wake up your child, you want to get them to school, guess what? I'm at fault for that. I just do it all. Right?
Oh, yes.
And it's just like, hey, we got to go, we got to get this done. And then, and that becomes a habit. Oh. And so even when you are home, it's like, well, no, we have time today. You can do this, right?
Yeah. And actually, Lois, you're making me laugh there, because I think so many parents will absolutely relate to that. I know I am so guilty of that. And because we are so rushed and we're doing things for them that they are so capable of doing for themselves. And in psychology and education, we talk about scaffolding our children's learning. And the idea behind this is that if we see ourselves as parents as being the scaffolding on a building, so we support our child learning new things, but we don't do it for them. Yes. And I think that's something we have learned a lot during the past year, where if we're doing things for them that they could do for themselves, we're thinking we can do it quicker, we can do it faster, maybe with less mess. But the message that we're giving them is that we don't have the confidence in their ability. And I think this has given us time to step back and allow them try new things. And again, that's in terms of their independence, and their independence feeds into their self-esteem to such a great extent. In order to have strong self-esteem, I have to feel capable. So the more we step back and just maybe give them little hints, or push them gently out of their comfort zone a little bit, get them to take on new tasks, we are really supporting the development of self-esteem, and that can only be a good thing.
That can only be a good thing. You're right. And that's what this is all about, is how are we going to help that with our children? So it's almost like sometimes there's that silver lining. We have time to be able to really hone some of these skills. And when we talk about like doing the new things, like I'm so guilty of that. Like I said, to just kind of get it done. But then even also for my daughter, this Christmas, I said, I'm not going to bake this Christmas. You know what I usually do? She says, well, I will. So she did it. And I closed the door and let her go. And she did wonderful. It was so nice for her to be able to do this totally on her own, because she'll even admit it. She's not the great cooker and all this kind of stuff, but she's seeing that, I can do that. So that's huge for her. And she's starting to learn another language, learning another language. It takes time to do all these things, and we don't have time. So now she's going to learn a different language. Her boyfriend and her, they were out building a quinzhee, and making their hot chocolate inside a quinzhee. Like I didn't even know what a quinzhee, well, I kind of knew what it was, but I'd never been in one. Like there's so many things that are happening that are so fun.
Lois, I have to ask you this. Quinzhee is not a word I'm used to over here in Ireland. Please tell me what this is.
All right. You make a big, huge pile of snow, right?
Oh.
And then you let it sit, for a while, so it packs. And then you go in and you dig a hole. So it's like kind of like a big hole that you create, and then you go into it. Like it's kind of like, an igloo, but it's not an igloo.
Oh,
And so then,
yes.
and then you go in there, and I couldn't believe how warm it was. They brought the blanket, and we sat there, and we made hot chocolate. And it took like, it was a whole day activity, and then the next day, and I thought to myself, I can't even imagine this happening if you're going to university and you're scheduled because you run off and do this and this and this.
Yeah,
It's just time for us to use our creative brains and
definitely.
be able to do
Oh,
something that we've always wanted to do, and
yeah.
we never thought we could because of time.
Yeah. Oh, Lois, that's a lovely example. It's just gorgeous. And I am so jealous. We get like little bits of snow over here, but actually, I do remember my husband and my son, oh gosh, it's quite a few years ago now. We had a big snow one Christmas, making a little igloo in the garden. But oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I've just really noticed that. And there's some days when I don't even go into my car for 2, 3 days. I'm just at
Yeah.
home, and it's like the gas bill is like one gas bill for the whole month, and maybe you haven't even gone through, like, there's
Yes.
just so many little things that you
Yeah.
kind of notice. And I
Mm.
think it is a shift. It's just, we need to say, okay, what are the good things? And we need to do that
Yeah.
with so many things in life, because
Yeah.
negativity, when it starts to come in about this, that, and that, we need to, I think, even teach our children to say, hey, what's the positive of this? What
Yeah.
can we learn from this? Here's a problem.
Yes.
What are we
Yeah.
learning from it that's going to benefit us?
Yes. And Lois, as I'm listening to you as well, I'm thinking, when we look back on 2020
Mhm.
in how many years' time,
Yes.
and even as adults, we might look back and we might think, oh my gosh, that was the year of COVID-19 and whatever.
Yeah.
Our children
Yeah.
will look back and they will, it's memories, just as you have described. I don't think our children will look back at this anxious year. They will look back and they will think, oh, that was the year I wasn't at school, but I was at home and mum was doing this or granny was doing this. Dad was helping me do whatever. Oh, and as you say, the building, the things that we did, the cooking, I really think they will look back on this time as a time of connection, as a time of family bonds.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, I think in some ways that's lovely. And I really don't mean to not to acknowledge that the difficulty and the challenges that people are facing. But I think you're so right. For our children, it is important that we remind them of what we've learned.
Yeah.
If I'm dealing with parents whose children are struggling with anxiety, and I'm always saying to them, it's our role is about helping them find their inner brave. It's about letting them see how capable they are and how strong they actually are,
Mm.
and the strength that takes them to deal with anxiety every day.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same. We do have an opportunity to teach our children that they are strong, and that this year, that this experience has made them more resilient and has shown them that when things happen in the future, they know they can cope. They know they have that grit in them to continue and to be resilient and to cope with life's challenges. And that is important to remember.
Yeah. And even if a child is seeing that the parent has to sort of, rethink their world, maybe they're going to have to change their job, and whether it makes everybody think about how the future might be for them. And if you have a mindset of, okay, I'm going to try something new, I'm going to move forward, and your child is watching you, that's incredibly valuable, because they're seeing you go, okay, problem, let's find a solution, and then they will model you, because they do. But if
Yeah,
just sitting back and going, no income coming in, what am I going to do?
yeah,
That's not going to benefit them. And
yeah,
I thought about, when you were talking, I thought about, how many of them are we're going to talk about the year that we had, grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles on Zoom while we sat at the dinner table for Christmas, right?
yes,
And we had
yes,
wonderful, we weren't together physically, but we were still together. And
yeah,
I think that being on this platform is good to have fun times on it too, because we don't want the kids just to assume that I got to go onto Zoom now and I got to learn to do my schoolwork. So
yes,
incorporating other things like exercise and activities and meeting with your friends online, and
yeah,
things like that. And so I think it's not, I think it's forcing everybody to just relook at things. And
yeah.
hopefully some of these things that have been really positive, we will continue on. you know?
Yes, I must say, Lois, I really hope so too. I think for so many of us, this has been a time of reflection.
Yeah.
And reflection, as you say, is how we learn. And you the way they say we learn from our mistakes. No, we learn from reflecting on our mistakes.
Yes.
And I think these challenges, if we reflect on them and we reflect on our life pre-COVID and our life now, there or in the future, there are opportunities there for us to rethink and to grow and to learn. And as you say, our children have seen us cope with challenges as well. That definitely, that reflection is worthwhile for the whole family. It definitely is.
So bringing us together, the connection, because I know with connection, we get lots more cooperation. You know what I mean?
Oh yes.
That's starting to happen within the families too. So I think that is great. Now, Mary, can you tell us about your book? I'm
So
interested in hearing about your book.
I'm so excited. This is my first book. So, although I've lectured for years, I've been working with parents for quite a few years now. And as you say, I do on our breakfast TV on Ireland, I do a parenting spot on the radio. So, finally, and in fact, probably actually, that's one of the things in 2020 COVID enabled me to do, having had a far too overscheduled life myself. During lockdown, I thought, I have the bones of a book here. I am actually going to do this. I'm going to just sit and I'm going to do it. So I'm delighted to say at the end of February, the book is going to be published. So perfectly imperfect parenting, because that comes from my absolute belief that we don't have to be perfect. And a theorist, Donald Winnicott, that I would talk about a lot in my psychology lectures, I suppose he was the father of the idea of good enough parenting. And again, how our children become resilient. Our little errors, our little mistakes as we go along the way enable our children to become resilient at a very low stakes level before they go on to higher stakes
Right.
experiences. So I think our imperfection is
Yes.
so good for our children. It's how we learn. And I think as parents, we need to acknowledge that and allow ourselves to breathe and think, you know what, none of us are perfect. Even the parent that maybe down the road and you think, oh, she's perfect. No, 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 she's not. Not one of us are. And it's not in our children's best interest for us to be perfect. We have to allow ourselves to be good enough. So that's where the original title comes from. And then the connection, not perfection, is because connection for me is everything with our children. And as you say, in good times, but also in the challenging days, that connection, I believe, is what gets us through as a family. So the book is very much looking at social and emotional development of our children, but viewed through that lens, that we don't have good enough is just exactly what our children need. And it's our bond, it's our connection, our relationships
Yeah.
are absolutely key.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I know it's coming out at the end of February. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to where they can get it or contact you or whatever for the book. And you're also
Brilliant.
going to be thinking about, you're not quite sure how you're going to be able to offer that book. So we'll get that information and be able to tell the audience. All right.
Yes, definitely, Lois. I will have a little offer. And my Facebook page is Dr. Mary O'Kane Early Years. So I'll post information on that near the time. I wish I had a copy of the front cover to show you now, but unfortunately I'm just a little bit too early. But definitely if you can pop something under this link and at the time it's released, that would be perfect.
Yeah, I will do that for sure. I will do that, and people can go to your Facebook and they can see when it's going to be coming out, because I love the fact that we're talking about that we don't have to be perfect. And I think so
Yeah.
often, I know myself, I'm trying to think, how am I always going to be, a better mother, and what can I do? What can I do? And sometimes you just gotta chill out and just relax more, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
And there's a silver lining in this time of life that we're going through. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you having this conversation with me. I think when we first spoke, we were kind of aligned a little bit
Yes.
with this, because as much as there are many things to talk about that are really detrimental to what the time is going on, we have kind of given it a little bit of a uplift in the conversation. And, I've always been accused of wearing my pink colored glasses throughout life, which I think has benefited me a lot. And I feel like that's kind of the conversation the lens through that we're looking at. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
So,
And I think you're right, Lois. And I think we're both in agreement. And much as a struggle this has been, it is important to find some good in everything. It definitely is.
we have to. Otherwise, we're not going to be really serving our children like we should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was so nice to talk to you, Mary. And,
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.